Hello, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we venture forth unto Warhammer 40k and it's now officially released 9th edition, bringing you a concise breakdown of the most important changes and additions. Number 1. Let's start with unit coherency, the bringer of daisy chain shenanigans across the battlefield in 8th edition. You only needed your models to be within 2 inches of each other. Now, so long as your unit size is 6 or greater, your guys need 2 coherency buddies to be within distance of. Now the 2-inch horizontal rule still remains, but now it's 5 inches that determines vertical coherency. Number 2. We have a new phase, ladies and gentlemen, and its name is Command. Right at the very start of every player turn, you'll now be given the gift of 1 command point, so long as you have a battle-forged army. Don't worry, those won't be your only CP, we'll get to that in a mo. But this phase will also act as the anchor for start of turn rules and stratagems. Number 3. Moving to the psychic phase, I smite you, sir. That's absolutely fine, fill your boots, but if you do it a second time, let me promise you, you're increasing its warp charge by 1, even if it's your buddy over there casting it. A third time, 1 more, and so on, and ha ha ha. In other words, you try and abuse the warp, it will try and abuse you. Number 4. Shooty time, as 9th edition has made it a core rule that only infantry units will be subject to -1 to their hit rolls. It makes sense to be fair, although I for one would sign a petition for Gretchen to be reassigned as something other than infantry just for the lols. Number 5. Vehicles and monsters can now do sweet dakka on those foes that have got themselves up close and personal and are in their engagement range, because they can now shoot you. So no more tying them up in close combat for a turn or 2. Although any heavy weapons shot in such a way will still be subject to a -1 modifier to their hit roll. And with super special targeting foresight, they can also target units they're not engaged with, but only if the engaged unit has been destroyed by the time you fire said weapons. Number 6. Characters have taken a sideways step in that those with up to 9 wounds are only untargetable if they're within 3 inches of a friendly unit with at least 3 models or a vehicle or monster. Notwithstanding the existing rule that being the closest enemy still negates that. Number 7. Still in the shooting phase, we have a nice old but new keyword for you to chew on. For those heartbroken they removed blast weapons in 8th edition, well, I'm pleased to say they've made a return, albeit in an alternative manner. No, you don't get to dust off those old templates, but you do get some guaranteed carnage. So you'll still roll for the number of hits you get to make with each weapon. If you're shooting a unit of between 6 and 10 models, you'll always roll at least 3 dice. And with units of 11 or more, you'll be rolling the maximum amount of dice. Number 8. Moving swiftly onto the charge phase, I bring you the glorious news that Overwatch is no longer a God-given right. If you want it, you gotta pay a CP for it, as it's now a stratagem, meaning that it can only be used once per turn as well. Love or hate this rule, it will certainly bring shooting and melee viability closer together, which is definitely a plus when you consider that terrain is certainly set to improve shooty armies. More on that later. Number 9. You can still target anything you want to charge within 12 inches, but you also have to get within engagement range of all the units you charged. So no more having a fallback plan of charging east, west or south as well. But as a little sweetener, although you do still have to target units you charged when it comes to fight, those characters that heroically intervened are fair game as well. Number 10. Here we have one more episode of the show, Who Gets to Fight When. So charging units go first. So far so 8th edition, but in a somewhat surprising move, it'll be your opponent that gets to fight after all the charges have gone, and then you alternate back and forth. This means that on your subsequent turns, if you've not charged with anyone, your opponent will get to go first. Interesting. Number 11. In a somewhat strange but minor modification of who gets to fight, 9th edition states that you'll be eligible if you're within engagement range of 1 inch or within 1/2 inch of another model that is within 1/2 inch of an enemy model. This is one that you just need to accept is clearly an improvement and move swiftly on. Pile in and consolidate are all the same, and so I suspect this will have a nominal effect on team reach-arounds. Number 12. Morale has undergone a zesty change, one that certainly benefits low leadership units, but not necessarily as much as you might think, especially if you're a horde army. So the core of morale test stays the same. You roll a d6, add it to the number of models you've lost in a unit this turn, and then see if that number exceeds your leadership. But this is when it diverges into 9th edition goodness. When that happens, you only remove one model, but then you roll a further set of dice equal to the number of guys remaining, and rolls of 1 mean you'll take away a further model for each. I think I like it. But be careful to remove the right models, because if that causes it to be out of coherency, it goes bye-bye as well. Number 13. Let's go global and talk about army building. No longer do you pick detachments and then get command points as a bonus for doing so. You actually start with a number of CP dependent on the size of the game, but most of the time that'll mean having 12 to use. You then spend those CP before the battle to take detachments that will ensure your army is battle forged. But you do get those points back if said detachment contains your one and only warlord. So in one fell swoop, the army building rules have cast off the silliness that ensued with low point detachments abusing the ability to get loads of command points, to then springboard into abusing stratagems. Well played, GW, well played. Number 14. There's a new type of action in town called actions, representing for example the raising of a banner or the disarming of a trap. These actions are only usable by certain units and in certain missions, but will require a modicum of concentration, and so will be the only thing that unit will do that turn. There are also psychic actions that will be similar to harnessing psychic powers, but will mean you can only do one or the other. Number 15. Reserves now cost you command points. Remember those extra juicy CP you get based on the size of battle? Well, GW wants you to use some of them if you like to bring things onto the table later on in the game. So, excluding deep strike-esque rules, you can come onto the table anywhere wholly within 6 inches of a table edge from turn 2 onwards, so long as it's not the enemy's table edge, and if it's turn 2, also within the enemy's deployment zone. In other words, yay side flanking, nay outflanking. Number 16. Terrain and cover, both of which have been treated as a bit of an afterthought in 8th edition, but here we are at the dawn of a new era with a comprehensive set of terrain rules. Without going into too much detail, we have 4 main types: hills, obstacles, ruins and area terrain, each of which comes with subtypes that have different rules applicable to them. Suffice to say, you'll see familiar +1 to save rolls, -2 inches to charge rolls, that sort of thing, but there's also the ability, for example, for those being charged within certain terrain to avail themselves of an improved 5-up version of Overwatch, or to increase their hit rolls in melee, and quite a few other nice additions as well. Number 17. Objectives and battle rounds in match play will be somewhat different in that all games finish after 5 rounds, so none of this variable game length guff. But also objectives in match play have changed, and for that matter split into 2 categories. Primary will most often be centred around securing battlefield objectives, and secondary, which you'll secretly choose at the start of the mission, will focus on more bespoke requirements, like killing an opponent's character or having units in your opponent's deployment zone. Most of these objectives score in multiples of 5 and 15, with a maximum accruable points for each of primary and secondary at 45. So with a rather controversial 10 points up for grabs for fielding an army that is painted to a battle ready state, that will potentially max you out at 100 points. Number 18. And so here we come to the end of the road for this here list. where we talk about the slow grow campaign style Crusade mode, which at least at launch is the primary way you'll be entering narrative play. Crusade brings a number of role playing and army progression rules to the table, garnering you experience and requisition points for you to spend on character and army upgrades, giving the campaign and its combatants a real sense of identity and flavour. So there you have it, the 18 most impactful changes and additions to Warhammer 40k 9th edition. I hope you're enjoying the tabletop content here on the channel. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.